Hello everyone, welcome to my channel The First to the Future. Here, I tell historical stories from the past. Enjoy watching. Let's pause for a moment. Truly pause. Have you ever wondered what it was like to fall in love in the 1940s? Today, love often begins with a message and ends in silence. But in the 1940s, love began in silence and often carried lifelong consequences. The world stood in the shadow of war. Cities were grey. The future was more fragile than people's courage. Back then, love was not a romantic dream. It was a serious risk. And this story begins in exactly such a world. On an ordinary day, no one noticed. In the 1940s, cities breathed around factories. Chimneys produced not only smoke, but destiny. People left their hours, their hopes, and sometimes their health within those walls. The large textile factory at the center of the city was one of them. The man who owned it was known by everyone. He was recognized for his wealth, discipline, and distant demeanor. People respected him, but very few truly knew him, because where power exists, loneliness often follows. For this man, life consisted of things that could be controlled. Numbers, production schedules, family expectations. Everything could be calculated. Emotions were seen as weakness. Love, in his world, was either a luxury or a temporary distraction. At least, that's what he believed until that day. Because sometimes life hides its greatest changes inside its smallest moments. Inside the same factory worked a young woman, one among hundreds of laborers. Her name was not known throughout the city. It never appeared in newspapers. But her early mornings at work and exhausted evenings returning home made her existence real. Her hands were calloused, her shoulders carried fatigue, yet the idea of a future still lived in her eyes. In the 1940s, that alone was an act of defiance. Their first encounter was not dramatic. No music played, no one stopped to watch. It was a routine inspection day. As the man walked along the production line, the woman looked up. Their eyes met, just for a few seconds, but some moments cannot be measured in seconds. No one realized a story had begun, but life had already made its decision. Then came the small things, encounters that looked like coincidences, brief greetings, glances that lingered a little too long, passing each other in the same corridors. Two people from entirely different worlds had begun orbiting the same feeling without realizing it. And history has shown us many times that societies deeply dislike blurred boundaries. This closeness could not remain hidden for long. For the man's family, this was not a love story, but a serious mistake. Marriage to them was built not on emotions, but on surnames, wealth, and power. The young woman's dismissal came quickly. The separation was presented as logical and necessary, but the heart has never been persuaded by logic. The separation was quiet. Train stations usually are. No one shouts, no one creates a scene, but everything is felt deeply. As the woman left the city, the man realized for the first time how fragile everything he owned truly was. This love demanded a price, and that price was far heavier than he had imagined. In the 1940s, defying one's family was not merely an emotional decision. It meant social exclusion, abandoning inheritance, and accepting an uncertain future. The man spent nights without sleep, thinking about his life for the first time. There are nights when you don't lose sleep, you lose yourself. And by morning, the decision has already been made. He chose his heart over his family's expectations. Risking his power, status, and inheritance, he followed the woman he loved. When she returned, she came not with fear, but with hope. There were no grand halls, no extravagant ceremonies, but there was genuine love. Their wedding was small, quiet, modest, but real. In the middle of war, fear, and pressure, this marriage was not just a ceremony, it was a quiet rebellion. And history is often silent choices. When we look back today, history books speak of wars, of fronts, treaties, and losses. But true courage is sometimes simply choosing to love, and this story reminds us of exactly that. Perhaps history is written not only by wars, but by the quiet courage of those who choose to love, even in the hardest times. If you enjoyed this kind of story, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next video. He was rich, she was not. He belonged to a family whose name opened doors. She belonged to a workforce that entered through the back. In 1940, love did not cross class lines easily, and when it did, it paid a price. The first to notice were not the lovers themselves, but the people around them. Glances held too long, conversations that paused when others entered the room, whispers, assumptions. The factory floor, once loud enough to hide everything, began to listen. His family noticed next. They were not cruel people, but they were practical, strategic. Marriage was not romance to them. It was alignment, legacy, reputation. A factory owner did not fall in love with a worker. He married someone who would strengthen the family name, not complicate it. At first, they dismissed it as a phase, a harmless distraction during uncertain times. But when weeks turned into months, concern hardened into opposition. He was called home more often, introduced to suitable women, reminded gently at first of his responsibilities. When gentle reminders failed, firmer language followed. Threats, subtle but unmistakable. The factory, his inheritance, all of it could be taken away. She felt the shift before he told her. Schedules changed, conversations shortened. Eyes followed her more closely. One afternoon she was reassigned without explanation. Another day she was warned, kindly but clearly, to remember her place. And still, they met, in corners, in moments stolen between obligations. Their relationship never became public, but it became real, deep, heavy with the knowledge that it might not survive. They talked about endings long before they talked about beginnings. He told her what his family wanted. She told him she understood. She had always known how stories like this ended. The rich man returned to his world. The worker returned to hers. Life went on, but understanding something does not make it acceptable. The pressure increased. His family issued ultimatums. Choose wisely, choose correctly, choose what you were born for. They reminded him that love did not feed workers or protect factories, that feelings faded, that consequences did not. For the first time, he questioned everything he had been taught. And she, watching him struggle, did something unexpected. She tried to leave. She believed that love, real love, meant knowing when to step away. That if she disappeared quietly, his life would return to its proper shape. She stopped meeting him, avoided him. When he finally confronted her, she told him it was over, that it had never made sense anyway. He did not accept it. Against advice, against expectation, against the carefully constructed future laid out before him, he chose differently. He confronted his family not with apologies, but with certainty. He spoke of respect, of choice, of a life that meant something beyond inheritance. It was not a victory. It was a war of attrition. Months passed. Arguments repeated. Silence replaced conversation. Invitations stopped arriving. Doors closed. And yet, something remarkable happened. The world outside was changing too. War reshaped priorities. Factories became essential. Labor became power. Women became indispensable. The lines that once seemed permanent began to blur. Slowly, resistance weakened. Not because his family suddenly approved, but because they realized something more dangerous. The scandal. He would not bend, and losing him entirely would cost more than accepting her. The wedding was small, quiet, without celebration or headlines, no grand speeches, no triumphant reconciliation, just two people standing together, aware of what they had lost, but certain of what they had chosen. She did not become part of his world overnight. He did not abandon it either. They built something in between, a life shaped by compromise, resilience, and a shared understanding of what it had cost. Years later, people would forget the controversy. They would remember only that the factory owner married a woman he loved, that it had been unusual, that it had worked. But those who lived it knew better. They knew that love in 1940 was not soft. It was not simple. It was forged under pressure, tested by class, threatened by power, and saved only by stubborn refusal to let go. This was not a fairy tale. It was a choice, and choices more than feelings are what define history. So if you ever wonder whether love can survive rules, systems, and expectations designed to crush it, remember this story. Remember that even in a time when the world was burning, two people found the courage to choose each other. And sometimes that is enough. Thank you for listening. And until the next story, remember, history is not made only by wars and leaders, but by quiet decisions made when no one is watching.